Hello, I'm continuing looking at the Chinese City Liga game by Yaoyu against Ke. So we said Black got an amazing result here, but this move was a bit slack. So the difference is that Black is leading by about 6 points here. So White comes out here, Black defends. It's a good move. The AI was thinking that you could go a bit further. And then the AI suggested Hane, Atari, and play here. This makes an eye and creates quite a bit more eye space if White gets to follow up at N12. And White also has a bit of eye space on the upper side as well. Something like L18 or K18. In the game, White played here, and you can almost think of it, if Black plays here, then there's probably not much else that White is going to do other than revert to that variation. So it's giving Black a choice. Unless White was still planning to play here, which is possible. The difference is that in the game, White takes Sente. So White takes Sente to play a move in the center. However, if you had played like this, it says the AI says that it's slightly better for White because your stones are almost already connected, including R11. And actually later you're not threatening to play at J10, but you're actually threatening to just take these stones out. And if Black doesn't save them, then actually you're already alive. So that's pretty important. But I'm guessing White fell behind, and White was putting the hopes on taking a large area on the lower side. Because the left side is already a bit destroyed, because Black is quite solid with this group. So this move was perfect to aim at the weakness and try to live just in the main area. There's always going to, even if White makes some territory around M3, there's still going to be a big endgame left with, say, O5. So this is really the main area you want to be living in, if you can. And you should be able to. It's a standard move. The AI suggested playing here, and just treating this as an exchange. There's going to be so much actually later, such as attaching around J4 because of the wedge, and coming back to attack this corner. And we can really call this an attack, not just an invasion, because Black is so solid here. Okay, White is saying that Black is not 100% solid, but this is pretty much already 2 eyes. And then coming back to the wedge. In the game, it thinks that Black can live fairly comfortably. But in the game, Black crawled, and it says that you should push first. You can get into the corner, and this is already pretty much making 1 eye in the corner, and then turn. Even though White can take this, later you're at least still threatening to play at C2. And then the difference is that this time this is an Atari, when it wouldn't be later. Because later, White could pull the stone up and play F4 instead of E4, because White is solid enough on the left side. Or at the least, White would never play E4 and exchange you to let you capture at F4. At the least, White would be playing to take away your eyes on the lower side. Black has a pretty clear life here, especially as there's an eye in the corner. Well, it's a code for an eye, but it's pretty much an eye. And then White comes back to defend the corner. And as I was saying before, even though this allows White to get strength on both sides, the corner was already White's. And this side, it's not as if white is really getting anything here, because black has a lot of endgame here. This turn is also creating some weaknesses and making it more difficult for white to reduce everything on the right side of the board. Funnily enough, this corner still has agi, but it's not going to impact white's life and death so much because white can still live inside black's area. Okay, so black ruled in the game, and the standard move is to take the corner now. There's no real other move here. You could consider this, just to take away black's eye in the corner, but the AI gives a nice sequence of this move. And again, these black stones are fairly light, and they already are causing white a lot of problems. For example, black is already threatening to sacrifice them by playing at j3 just to get shape. So you don't really want to risk white getting profit here and still being able to use the agi of this. But if you just defend, then this is perfect shape for black. And with the push and d2 rather, there's a lot of potential for an eye on the side already. You have to fix j3. But black just smoothly moves up. By attaching, you can pretty much get an eye here. Obviously, you've already got an eye here. And there's also some bad agi in white's position. So there's, for example, like this. Maybe you don't do this yet because you're interested in the cut. And there's still some agi on the left side. But at the very least, there's going to be this sort of agi. So you have to play around here. Then there's going to be some agi of the j3 move. So for now, you have to play here. But for that reason, it's going to be difficult to kill. Even though the AI didn't like this move at 7.5 Komi, it actually said that this had the highest score estimate, and this was leading by 7 points. There are some other standard moves. For example, if you push now, it's not going to be sente. This was one suggested variation. And black is still a bit behind enemy lines here. Oops, not that way. But white also has some problems in this variation because white's group on the upper side is not alive. It doesn't really even have one eye yet. There was also this variation given. Okay, the eye in the corner is gone. But black just connects up naturally, or maybe not. No, not connect. Sorry. Still pretty complicated. White still has dreams of killing this group. If you honey, then there's a very obvious shape point that white can aim at. So you can see that white is still using f3 to stop j3 from happening. For example, this is a double atara. So white can play, black can play here to aim at that. Still not enough space to live though. At least to live cleanly. Of course it's the turn. Still some agi around her. Play here. The shape point becomes kicking. And you kind of want to play J2, but it's still, for example, if black just blocks, then it's much more efficient than the previous variations. Black is making ice space more efficiently. So this way, if black still plays H2, at least you have a much stronger follow-up. And if black plays like this, then you also have a much stronger follow-up. At least you're taking away the ice space at the same time. It suggests this variation. What's going on here? Right, you're threatening to pull the stone out. You couldn't pull the stone out before because this is Sente, and then this is just pushing through. But like this time you're threatening to cut like this. So that's why black reinforces. Okay, so black just gets out like that. And white will try to consolidate either the left side, well, white will try to consolidate both the left side and the area around the middle of the lower side. But as I said, the AI thinks that this is the strongest possible move. You get the most ice space out of this. And at this point, for example, white can catch, but you get out in the most forceful way. Because you have this P5 stone, and white stones here are weak. And you're still kind of interested in eyeing white's weaknesses in the center. It gives this pretty strange variation. If white just blocks, then black's shape is clearly a bit more resilient than before with this tiger mouth. It's pretty much already alive. It has an eye on the side, and you can just capture the stone. Once you're solid, you can aim at white's weaknesses. In the game, white wasn't satisfied with any of those and wanted to attack black more severely. But then black played a pretty bad move. Playing here. So it said that like this, the difference would be 8 points. Jump to remove ice space. So you already have an eye on the side, and you don't have an eye on the corner completely, but it's very difficult to take away that eye. Okay, like this, you don't have an eye in the corner. You can see like this. However, this push is going to be Sente, and the sum total of that is that white is very low on Libertito. So you can honey, and white has to defend around here. So you can get out quite smoothly. If we just imagine some move around here, this is forcing, and you've captured this stone. And this isn't necessarily helping either, because there's still a push, Tare, and a nice shape. In the game, when black plays here, KataGo says the difference is 3 points if white just turns. It's still not easy for black to live, and white will save this stone. You can see that even though p5 is doing something, it's not necessarily a good exchange with o5. So it really seems to say that black is going to live in Gote here. And white will get a nice corner and get profit on all sides. And what I was saying before about there still being some problems around r3 and s4 may come into play in some of these variations, if black wants to save this cutting stone as well. In the game, white wanted to attack the whole group, but this gave black an opportunity to just live, and it's actually a very comfortable life. Maybe even better than before. Actually, I think I said it was slightly worse for black than before already. But still 7 points difference. Oh, solid. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it goes up there. It's pretty much all white, as far as I can tell. Because black still has a shortage of liberties around here. There's kind of still a cutting point with these 3 stones. But the question is, does white want to block black coming into here, or does white want to save these stones? And the corner's still open. In the game, black honey, which gave white an even more efficient way, arguably, to capture these 2 stones. And it was saying the difference would still be 6 points if black played here. This is also a move, and it's a similar variation to the game, except just simply better for black than the game, because if black plays here, it reverts to the game. Okay, so you extend out into the centre, and you lose these cutting stones. And the AI said you should block here. And just to and take the profits that you while you still can, because actually white has gotten extremely solid around here, so it's not easy to attack the white stones in the center, even though that seems to be what black is trying to do. So while you still can, take this profit when white is not solid enough to fight back. I was a bit surprised at this move. My instinct for some reason was to play here, but that maybe makes the cut a bit less severe because it doesn't short white's liberties. Like this way around, you at least get this Atari, so that's some profit already. And white definitely has to defend this cut. Okay. In the game, black attached. It's still possible, but the game is now very close. The difference is 2 points that black is leading by. So black gets this wall in the center, but the problem is that it hasn't yet captured white, and if anything, white is so solid that black is under attack. So black played here. This is kind of just taking the territory on the right side, not even bothering saving these two this wall of black stones. The AI suggested playing like this, and then white still needs to run away. It seems to be worried that the whole left side will become a large white area because white is so solid in this corner. Though actually, it is also thinking about this b3p, though that happened later in the game. If you don't start attacking, then the proper defensive move is to play here. And actually, white still has some shape problems once black is solid. So, in the game, white played a very strange move. And I can tell you that this was arguably the losing move. Because after this, it was very difficult for white. The proper move was to play here. Black will pull back, connect the stones, but white would also save the stones. And white would have that little bit of eye space in the center, and just keep everything together and connected. Even connecting up to the right side as well. But in the game, white played a trick move. So if black pulls back, then when white plays here, arguably it's better. It's not necessarily better, in fact. But you could argue that black isn't doing as much, and white has already saved the stones on the right, but there's still a lot of agi with the O4 stones. If you... well, what other moves do you have? If you pull back, maybe white would play here? Not sure, white might still play play the bump. If you play here, that seems to just be helping white. There's still a problem in your own area to deal with. If you honey, then you're really in trouble this time. Well, it's complicated, but it's pretty risky for black to play like this. So, can you find black's Tsuji? The order of moves is very important there. So the idea is that you have this in center, and then you have this move. So if white plays here, then you just cut straight through. However, this is not optimal because white can capture these stones in center even. If you play here, then you can cut. And well, white is cut off here. So I'm actually not sure how it's better than just the honey. It's as if you played this exchange, which doesn't seem like it's necessarily good. I guess white wouldn't actually Atari here. White would just go directly there and preserve the edge of playing there. So if white plays here, maybe you have this sort of edging. It looks like, yeah, white is in trouble here, it seems. If you connect, then this is instantly in trouble. It's the same as the previous variation. So if you play here, that means that means you can't cut because that's not as good as if you had just honeyed. So instead, presumably, the answer is that black can cut. And well, it doesn't look like you have very good shape if black can get out here. Your whole group has no eyes. Okay, so the answer is to attach. And this just leaves no good move for white, because this time if you connect, then there's not even that variation before where you capture some stones. You're still in deep trouble. And this is so efficient because black is even threatening to Atari here and capture the 04 stones on a large scale. But white should still have connected. In the game, white played here. So white should have connected and just responded to everything. Yes, these stones are already cut off. There's no way to save them. but it's still the best possible. Like this. This time black uses this move. So if we play here, then there's this Atari. So again, white is just overplaying here, and the moves don't quite work. So the AI is giving pretty bad scores to them. But black has captured the whole upper side, and the difference is 11 points. And in the game white played here, there wasn't really any good shape to fix this. The AI suggested playing here, it also thought that there wasn't much hope. You even lose these stones as well. White's benefit is capturing these stones. Another idea is to just play the honey. Start actually just making eyes for your group. Okay, in the game, white played here, cutting these stones off. But the AI was pretty quickly giving white even worse scores than before. Honey. Just making sure white has no way to resist. And attach. It said that you had to fight back here. Something like this. And at least white can defend the key cutting point at L10. For some reason it made these exchanges. So locally on the lower side there's Miai of this Atari and this Atari. And because of that, white isn't interested in going into the corner, because O1 is going to be Sente. So you want to play it around R2 to go into the corner, rather than Q2. And this was pretty instructive that white is still dead, even though you can try to mess around here. This is what happens when the AI thinks it's behind. Anyway. The reason this isn't so good is simply because white gets this in Sente, threatening to cut. Because white has an empty triangle, white doesn't actually have enough liberties. Even though it looks like black's cutting stone, it has no liberties. But then after this move, it said that the game was much closer, at 5 points difference. The question is, does this cut work? It thought that this cut definitely worked without the exchange of these stones. But at this point, for example, it was considering just cutting or just pulling back, rather than making this exchange. However, after more playouts, I think it did say that this did work, and the difference would be 20 points if you played her. For example, connection, then run out. I mean, this looks very strange. You have to save this side, then peep, jump. I think it ended up being a ko. I don't remember, but it's pretty complicated. there's going to be potentially some capture race with the black-white group on the right side. But if that didn't work, then this exchange hasn't become very good. The only thing it's gained is the p2 move. It's a very big endgame, but if you're giving up this many black stones, it's pretty painful as well. Okay, so white honey. And again, it thinks this black move was slack. You could have played the knight's move, especially as there's a cutting point. So it gave white an opportunity to at least save this white group. Anyway, this was the key point. And this was the move that KataGo suggested, even though it thought that it was slightly worse for points. Simply because it was behind, so it was good to create some agi in black's position. The difference was about 5 points. So the proper move was to pincer. This is because there's agi in black's connection around here. Or the high pincer, more directly aiming at the cutting points. Okay, so white honey and connect. And black went after this corner, which was good timing, but the game was getting closer. White played the attachment, which didn't seem to have that much meaning at first, especially in the game because black just captured it. You can't honey here, for example, because this becomes sente. Well, no, maybe it's not sente. But maybe there's still some ko-agi in your own position, because white can play like this to set up the ko, and then there's going to be this double atari. So black just connecting as proper. That came back here, but the shape is bad. You can see that even though black has gotten n7, it's still not really connected. And the difference is 4 points. Black cut off the group, which was fine. It also created some co-threats, but more importantly, it was good endgame. For some reason, the AI really, the AI said this was slightly better, just to change what happened with the cut around here. It was pretty much the same. The difference was back to 9 points for some reason here. It was even thinking about this, but it just doesn't actually work. Even with more playouts, it was still considering this variation. But anyway, the move in the game is the correct move. So locally here, you can capture these 2 stones, but that's all. It's in gote. and you need to make life with your group. And this is the only move to make life. You're literally just making an eye here and an eye here. Now this is live. It said that you could push, turn, and then make life. Like this. And that white would be in even deeper trouble. It looks risky. Because at this point there's this cutting point. But I think you can just pull back. There's also this peep, but the thing is that in the game, in the variations given, black is just completely fine, and white's still dead. Okay, so this was all fine in the game. The attachment was also a good move. Simply because there's so much agi with b3 that white can't let white can't let black get into that position. To the extent that it said that this might just be the best move. And this is necessary timing, because if you don't play here now, then white will push at j7. This is all fine. And jump. It preferred this jump because of some agi that happened. You can see it from the game as well. This move, for some reason it didn't like black's move here, even though I find it a little bit hard to understand. Because it does seem to save these stones now. White can't push this. Maybe there's some magic in the corner, or maybe there's more co-threats. But I didn't really understand. It preferred this move. It seems like these stones are hanging, which seems pretty big. After you capture 4 points here, you don't have to fill in 2 points inside your own territory to capture these black stones or to connect. So that might be about 6 points or so. The difference here is the same. So the main difference is that black gets R5, which means that white doesn't have S8. Which means that this is forcing. So all in all in that sequence, black has gained the S11 move. And how big is that? Well, you still have this follow-up. So you have 2 points here. Well, a bit less than 2 points because they impact on this side, maybe. Yeah, a bit less than 2 points. Whereas if white had played at S11, white would have around if white had played S11, white would have these 1, 2, 3 points. So that's a difference of around 5 points. That is actually quite big. Maybe that's the main reason. Even if this is 6 points, that's 6 points in Goto, whereas S11 is a Sante thing. So it's better to have your 5 points in Sante rather than saving these 6 points, which white could only have taken in Goto. Maybe that's it. Okay, so white Atari. At this point, it thought the game was very close again because of this move. and it was just 2 points difference in it. And it said that this jump was always a vital point that neither side played for a while in the game. There ended up actually being a lot of agi inside black's position. Checker tried to start it with this move, which was okay, but the AI suggested playing here directly. This corner kind of hangs in the balance in a lot of the variations. It's Ko. So Ko pretty much was Seki. Though it's very difficult to win the game if white can't convert this into points. Or around here. And then here. Essentially there's a cutting point against these black stones, which is what both sides are thinking about. Sorry, that's not the right move. What is going on here? Right, trying to make the Ko even bigger because it's if white can live here, then it's saved a lot of stones. Okay, so white started here. This is threatening to Hane at b13. Right, so if you play here, then your stones are already dead. Yeah, so you have to respond. You could possibly give them up like this, but it changes the endgame at a18, which is a pretty big move. Okay, but this leaves several cut points and also a cut. Okay, so white saves the group here. So all you have to do is descend, but that's feels a bit like resigning because you're accepting that this is going to be Seki rather than white points. In the game, white pokes here. It's thought that after this exchange, the proper poke was here. White has to defend, black has to defend the top as black did in the game. And then there's this standard endgame sequence, which is quite nice. I only learned this relatively recently from Treyon Wu, I think she's called, one of her videos. So if you play here, then the two stones are dead. If you play here, then there's this clan Tatari. But if you play here, then you've lost the points on the side, and you've lost that one extra point. Well, actually two in this case, because white gains a point as well in this area. Because white can Atari now. Okay. So white came here. It didn't think that this was such a good move. Black fighting back was okay, but it really wanted to play here to shore up the agi. And then I think it didn't really like this move, and it wanted to push straight through. Instead, black has to retreat. Right. This is mitigating the code significantly, because now white has one less liberty. Even at this point, it said that this jump is nice. And by this point, white has already kind of made mi of d7 and f6, so white can jump in. White played here, which was kind of trying to aim at this cut, and kind of trying to aim at the life and death on the left side, but there were just too few liberties, and black has such a big wall here that there was no real hope. Now black got the key point. White peeped, and black could connect either side. And this was a nice move to defend all the cutting points. This white move was in preparation for the ko to get black to play more heavily. Push, 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 that's all normal. And then we started this ko. The normal endgame would be to play here, because at this point the ko isn't so big, because you've already lost liberties with your stone there. However, it is actually quite scary if you haven't done enough reading. So white is threatening this ko, and black defends against that. And rather nicely, it also defends against this ko at the same time. This ko is actually threatening black's whole life and death with the whole group. And we have this final ko. It actually, I think it wanted to play here to reduce the ko threats, but it looks like there's quite a lot of ko threats even now. White can kind of try to live inside. And that requires a response. And this is the key move, to actually poke away black's lives. And black just doesn't have enough ko threats for that. But black is far from dead, because there's this move. And it's painful for white to save these, because white loses quite a lot of points in terms of territory, and there are lots of ko threats against this. And then there's this ko. And the problem is that white is in a shortage of liberties. The only way to connect is this. But in order to prevent black from cutting here, you need to hold on to these stones. For example, if you just connect now, then you have this sort of problem. So it's just a ko at this point. And there are lots of ko threats here. So of course the AI had read everything out and was saying that black was already leading by 15 points or even 20 points at this stage. But when the ko is still not settled and this whole black group is hanging, it's still very confusing. So white connected to minimize ko threats. This ko threat is very big, it's threatening to save all of that. This is a ninth ko threat, threatening to live. Also, one thing is that you have to realize is that connecting here doesn't help, because you can't cut. If you save these stones, you can't save the cutting stones. So it's not actually a threat against this group. If you want to make it a threat, you have to connect somewhere else. Let's say here. Then black lives here, and if you cut, then your whole white group is dead. So this is hopeless. You have to save this. By this point, this is white is running out of co-threats. Even though white's position was so solid, white still doesn't have that many co-threats. And the main thing is that black still has co-threats here. And you can see 1, 2, 3. Maybe that's not the right order. Maybe you can push here. Maybe that's not actually a co-thread, but anyway, you have at least 3 co-threads already. You can't ever use the threats around here because then when you play around here, white will just connect and then threaten this card. So you can't afford to let white connect here. However, you have 3 co-threats there, and at the moment, white doesn't have any co-threats on the upper side of the board. If you respond to this, then that pretty much implies that you're responding to the next one. So that's another co-thread. That must be a co-thread. The next move, however, doesn't look like it's a co-thread anymore. And you can just take this. It looks fine. You throw in here. I think it's the same principle. The next move is not going to be a co-thread. The next move is just not a co-thread. Okay. So actually, black did seem to have enough co-threats in order to save everything. Anyway, black just consolidated and ended the co. And instead of being up, say, 17 points, black was up 12 points. And well, this is Sente. The reason black plays this is to just make bigger co-threats for the upper right co. I think my understanding is that as long as if black can make sure white is a seki in the upper right, then black is going to win. But if white can capture these stones in the upper right, then it's going to be close. Well, black is going to make sure black is going to need a co-thread and maybe get some from the co-thread. So there are quite a few co-threads around here. If it were only just a matter of, say, the A4 peak, which I guess is a co-thread, but it's only a co-thread because of the agi around B3. Actually, maybe A4 is not a co-thread. Anyway, we'll see what happens in the game. Black just plays this big endgame move, which is also setting up co-threats such as D8. So that's just one co-threat, maybe? Arguably there's going to be another co-threat after another two-ish co-threats, but they will lose points. What I mean is, this is a co-threat, and then this is arguably a co-threat, because if you don't respond, then it's a co. Black can just capture the co, and it threatens to make a bulky 5, even though you can't connect up over here. You can still capture the co. And like this, it's still going to be it's still going to be a co-thread. Okay, so that's just a big endgame move by itself. If white had turned, then white would get an extra 3 points or so, and then also make this an Atari. So that's an extra 4 points, I think. More than 4 points. White is trying to set up co-threats here. Now there's a co-threat at Q4. and then start this code. Unfortunately, it didn't work. So there's no point taking this code because then it really is a double code. You can never take this because then you lose. So, well, I'm not even sure if black does actually lose that, but to win the code, the proper way is to connect, because this is not the important code. The important code is whether black can make a bulky 5 here, because white has just said all in, I'm going to try to make this into territory, rather than trying to make it into a seki. Black plays this final co-threat. And if black can live here, black is winning by miles, like 40 points or so, 30 points or so. And white resigned here. So why is this alive? Just locally, if white had this, and white had, yeah, even if white just had that, well, maybe that's not the right place to put it. Okay, let's say white was connected around here. Then it looks awkward to live. Like, it looks like it's at least a ko. If you connect, then I think clamp. Sorry, you wouldn't connect there, would you? You would say play something like this, but then that's just dead. So this is white's final trap. Like this. Again, black is dead. However, so essentially, in this position you have to throw in, and then it will be a ko. Actually, it wouldn't be a ko, it would be dead. However, this position is not like that. In the actual game, white has 2 cutting points nearby. If you play like this, I guess it would be a ko for now, but you can't connect anymore because after this cut, then white is dead. But white also has no co-threads, so you have to connect them. And then you can play here, and then black needs a local co-thread. No, black doesn't have any local co-threads, but black can play here, threatening to kill. So if white ends this, then this is now a dead shape. And black is so solid everywhere on the board, I think. So there's not much hope of even one co-thread. For example, pushing here. Right, so pushing here. I think you could even give this up, because this seems to connect up. If you played this first, there doesn't seem to be any good move for black. This isn't going anywhere. Black is just alive here. So at the end of the game, white added a move and black couldn't do anything. White couldn't do anything, I mean. No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for watching.